Welcome back to Deadline DC with Brad Bannon. I promised you a policy double hitter today, and we deliver here at Deadline DC. In the first half hour, we talked about foreign policy with CNN military analyst Cedric Layton. In this half hour, we're going to turn to domestic policy and discuss Donald Trump's big, ugly reconciliation bill. Our guest to guide us through this horrible mess is Alex Lawson, the executive director of Social Security Works. And I just want to warn our viewers that I'm wearing a red shirt today. Not because I'm a Trump supporter, but I want to point out the red ink that is going to come to the American taxpayers if this big deficit budget busting bill passes. Again, our guest is Alex Lawson, Executive Director of Social Security Works. Before we bring him on, though, we're going to play this clip about the voting on Trump's big bad budget bill.
CNN chief data analyst Harry Enton here to run the numbers. All right, Harry, how do Americans feel about the big, beautiful bill?
Yeah, if we're talking about adjectives, how about they think it's awful, they think it's horrible, and to quote our colleague Charles Barkley, terrible, terrible, terrible. What are we talking about here? Well, let's take a look at the net favorable rating on the big, beautiful bill. I don't just got one poll for you, Omar. I got 5 of them, and the net favorable rating, minus 19 points, Washington Post, minus 20 points, Pew Research Center, Fox, minus 21, Quinnipiac University, minus 26, KFF, minus 29. You don't have to be a mathematical genius to know that when the net favorable rating of your bill is somewhere between minus 19 and minus 29 points, that it is not a positive bill as viewed by the American public. The American public at this particular point hate the big, beautiful bill. As far as they're concerned, it's not a big, beautiful bill. It's a big, bad bill.
I always appreciate when you hold back, Harry.
I know,
look,
I try.
As people have learned more about the bill, I mean, obviously we're still in these stages working out individual pieces, and we'll see where this ends up. But as people have learned about it, has that popularity changed at all once they get more details?
No, Omar. You know, we have Quinnipiac University. They hated it in early June when the net favorable rating was minus 26 points. And look at where we are in late June. It's the same, minus 26 points. The more they learn about this bill, they hate it just as much. I've been going through the historical books and trying to find a piece of legislation that looks more likely than not to pass and seeing if there is one as unpopular as the big, beautiful bill. And the bottom line is, Omar, I can't find one. This one is in the history books, and for all of the wrong reasons as far as the American public is concerned.
So why is this bill so unpopular?
Why is this bill so unpopular? Well, I think Republicans would argue that this bill is supposed to help out the American people and their family. But the American people disagree with that idea. All right, Trump's policies and your family, help or hurt? The big, beautiful bill, just 23% say help. How about 49%? 49% say hurt. Look, that's a 26-point difference in the direction of hurt. Compare that to Trump's first-term agenda, where the plurality said it helped their family at 44% compared to 31% who said hurt. So the American people elected Trump to help them and their families, but they see the big, beautiful bill as one that, on the whole, hurts their families.
All right. Helpful perspective as we work through the individual details of where the Senate negotiations are.
That was Harry Enton from CNN talking about how dreadfully unpopular Trump's big bad bill is. Our guest is Alex Lawson, Executive Director of Social Security Works. Alex, I'm going to ask you a stupid question in the hopes you can come up with an intelligent answer. If this bill is so unpopular, why are Republicans so hell-bent on passing it? Is this political suicide?
For many of them, it is. But there's two reasons. One is that many politicians, especially Republicans, are more afraid of the billionaire donors who run their party than they are of their constituents. And the second reason is that many Republicans are more afraid of Donald Trump and his very militia cult-like followers, and than they are of the constituents they represent. So when you mix those two together, you see a politician like Tom Tillis, senator from North Carolina, who ended up voting against the bill, the motion to proceed in the Senate, and then abruptly retired. Right? He said, "I am not going to run for re-election," making the North Carolina Senate seat much better outlook for Democrats. And Tillis, he vocalized, "This bill is terrible for North Carolina due to the massive Medicaid cuts. Nationwide, 17 million people lose health care, over $1 trillion in cuts to Medicaid. You don't get $1 trillion in cuts to Medicaid by nibbling around the edges, right? This is a dagger through the heart of healthcare for tens of millions of people. 17 million lose their healthcare altogether. And go to nursing homes, though, right? So nursing homes, 1 in 2 people in nursing homes is paid for by Medicaid. But what about the person who's not paid for by Medicaid? Do they get off unscathed? No, obviously not. If their nursing home closes because 1 in 2 people are paid for by Medicaid, the number is much larger than just the 17 million who lose health care. And that's 17 million, right? We've seen estimates, 51,000 deaths a year that would not have otherwise occurred because of the big, beautiful betrayal that the Senate is currently hell-bent on advancing. So is it political suicide? For many of them, Brad, it is. They know it. It's just that they're more scared of their donors and Donald Trump than they are of their constituents. And, for some of them, they're just looking already for their next job. And so for those reasons, it is advancing through the Senate. It's also being thrown as a hot potato back to the House. I think the Senate, there's some amount of senators being like, if somebody's going to vote this down, let's have it be the House and not the Senate. And so, you have a 3-person margin in the House. And so it is actually this really unlikely scenario where it's a narrower majority in the House than the Senate. So that's sort of why we see this thing cruising along, deeply unpopular. But the Republicans believe that pissing off Donald Trump is a worse outcome for them than losing their job because they have killed their constituents.
We should also note that in addition to Senator Tillis announcing he wasn't going to run for re-election, a comparable event happened on the House side where Don Bacon, a moderately conservative Republican from a swing district, announced he wasn't going to run for re-election. Do you expect many more to follow suit?
I think that so hopefully, hopefully what happens is that enough, 4, 5, 6, 7 Republican congressmen realize that they don't want to go down in history as killing their constituents, destroying rural hospitals. There's a piece in the American Prospect by David Dayen. Republicans propose a hospital apocalypse. And I think it's the only thing that I've seen really with the correct magnitude of what these Republicans are proposing. I mean, it's something that no one in this country has seen before. So hopefully there'll be a gang of Republicans who decide that they're just going to vote no and then retire and do something else. I don't think that that's that likely. I think more likely is that you're going to have, if we are defeating it, it's by a slim amount. But you'll have a lot of Republicans who vote for it and then go on to lose their seats, just like happened with Trump Care 1.0, which was an almost identical setup. And that one ended in the Senate with John McCain's thumb down, but I don't think there's a John McCain in the Senate this time.
Okay. We're going to have to take a short break here to give our radio listeners a little break, but we will be continuing the video portion of the interview with our guest in this half hour, Alex Lawson, Executive Director of Social Security Works. So if you're a radio listener, you're getting a quick break, but don't go anywhere. We'll be back in a couple of minutes with more of Deadline DC with Brad Bannon. Welcome back to Deadline DC with Brad Bannon. We're talking about Donald Trump's ugly, big ugly bill of betrayal, as Alex calls it. Our guest in this half hour is Alex Lawson, Executive Director of Social Security Works. Alex, let me ask you a question here. There's a process going on in the Senate, which is called Voterama. Can you tell our viewers what that is exactly?
Yeah, I'd say it's the stupidest part of the stupidest process in the stupidest part of our government. So, Voterama is this really ridiculous process where the senators, basically of the party that's trying to stop something from happening through budget reconciliation, put up an enormous number of amendments to slow things down. The party that is pushing the thing through reconciliation, they put up an enormous number of amendments to make the thing worse. But in the end, they can actually just get rid of anything that they don't want. So before it actually goes to the floor, the party that is in control can just get rid of any of the amendments. So it is a theater-like exercise. But again, I think it's important to note, like, first of all, the Senate, super non-representative, right? Extraordinarily anti-majoritarian. You have two senators from California who have the same power as the two senators from Wyoming, where you could not find one suburb of one city like LA that doesn't have more people living in it than the entire state of Wyoming. So already, the Republicans, by representing these very sparsely populated states, they get an enormous advantage in the Senate. Then you add on top of that things like the filibuster, which prevent the Democrats from doing things when they're in power. I will say that the Republicans are much better at ignoring process constraints when they're in power.
Yep.
But this budget reconciliation process is the way that they pass things with only 51 votes in the Senate. But then through this process, they say, oh, well, that part needs 60 votes. And then the Senate Republicans just say, no, it doesn't. Now, I went through this with the Senate Democrats, and every time we were like, hey, we want vision, hearing, and dental on in Medicare, and the parliamentarian would strike it down, and then it would be dead. But these Republicans, they don't care about rules. They don't care about process as long as they are able to get what they want. You know, I think Mitch McConnell, in talking about the Medicaid cuts, he's like, they'll get over it.
Yeah.
Right? That's sort of their thinking on this.
Yep. Okay, we're going to take another quick break to bring back our radio listeners. We're talking about Donald Trump's bad, big bill of betrayal. Our guest is Alex Lawson, who is the Executive Director of Social Security Works and a prime mover in opposition to this horrible bill. We'll be back with more of Deadline DC with Brad Bannon right after this break with our radio audience. Welcome back to Deadline DC with Brad Bannon. especially our radio audience who are now rejoining us. And by the way, for our radio audience, if you want to watch us and well as listen to us and must see online progressive TV, you can see the show at twitter.com/Brad Bannon, at facebook.com/Deadline DC with Brad Bannon /videos, or at youtube.com/at Deadline DC. Our guest again in this half hour is Alex Lawson, Executive Director of Social Security Works. Alex, we talked about the liabilities that will exist in healthcare for if this bill passes and is signed by the president. There are other things that are jeopardy in this bill too. They're cutting away much of the clean energy spending investment that Joe Biden initiated during his presidency. There's more money for ICE to deport and terrorize immigrants who come to the land of the free for freedom and opportunity. Talk about some of the other items that will be cut as if this bill becomes law.
Yeah, I think to us, we do focus primarily on 17 million people losing healthcare, rural hospitals across the country collapsing, nursing homes across the country collapsing. And we have data on this, 51,000 people a year who wouldn't have otherwise died dying. And, it's really, it is unthinkable that this is the debate that we're having, but we are. The Republicans want to kill people to give tax handouts to billionaires. But as you said, that's not all that's in this bill. It is even worse on multiple fronts. We also like to look square at, another deeply immoral part of the bill, which is the destruction of food assistance in this country. I mean, literally, already I named, rural hospitals, nursing homes. You're talking about the most vulnerable people in this country, the oldest of the old, people with disabilities. Add on literally grabbing the food off of their plates that is keeping them alive. That's what the Republicans are proposing. And it's not little pieces, right? It's massive destruction of food assistance. And I continue to say, and the polling continues to back this up, that just the problem isn't that people want this to happen. Because as you noted in the segment you played from CNN, super unpopular. When you tell people what's in here, they're like, no, 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 I don't want that at all. I wanted my costs to go down. And they're like, joke's on you. Your costs are going to keep going up. You're just not going to have any healthcare, hospitals, or nursing homes anymore. And now we're also going to steal the food off of your plate. The problem isn't that people want that deeply immoral future, vision for a future. It's that they don't know that that's what's in the bill. And most of the media does a horrible job educating people about what's in the bill. And so, unfortunately, the first that people will hear of this bill for far too many millions of Americans is going to be when they go to a hospital that no longer exists, or they learn that their loved one is kicked out of a nursing home that's closed, and they have no plan except to take them into their home and somehow become a caregiver to someone who needs 24-hour nursing care. It's not possible. So the problem is, and that's why they're rushing. They're rushing, Brad. They're lying and rushing. That's the Republican strategy. Donald Trump continues to go on TV and say, hey, this thing is going to give tax handouts to you. It's not going to cut Medicaid, and it's going to decrease the deficit. Every one of those things is factually false, right? it is not giving a tax break to anyone except the richest Americans in this country. Most people will see their tax bill go up. It's stealing people's health care, $1 trillion in cuts from Medicaid alone, right? And then, I don't think that you could ever say that those two things, oh, well, at least they lowered the deficit. That wouldn't move me. But it's also the case that these guys hold like reason for doing this. They always say it's, to get the fiscal house in order. This thing blows a larger hole through the budget than anything that's been proposed, right? It is a massive accumulation of debt and deficit, and of deficits and debt. Huge. And the bond markets are reacting that way. So it is the worst case of all of them, right? You get people die, and it doesn't address any deficit or debt concerns at all. In fact, it makes them much worse.
Okay, let me ask you this question about the impact if this bill becomes law. You're trying to rally activists across the country to oppose this bill. And my question is, if the bill passes, do you think it is so unpopular, as Harry Enton demonstrated, that it will uh, gin up turnout among people, progressives who might not vote in midterm election? Because that's really the big question. If we're ever going to slow down Trumpism, we need to take back the House. Do you think there's enough anger and furor and horror that this will gin up progressive turnout over levels that it was, for instance, in the last midterm election?
Yes. I think that there'll have to be an enormous change in reality for us to not see a repeat of 2018 or bigger. And just as a recap for people who weren't around or paying attention then or whatever, uh, it's the exact same thing. But in 2018, the Republicans didn't get the thing across the finish line, right? So it was just the threat of doing basically the same thing that they're doing right now, that led to enormous increases in turnout during the midterms and historic losses for the Republicans. And all indications, right? So polling, but also off-year elections, special elections, everything that we've seen is massive, massive turnout by Democrats against the Trumpist agenda everywhere where they're given the opportunity. And if you just sort of like map on some of the, there was I don't have the numbers at the top of my head right now, but there was a district in Florida that was like an R plus 40 something, and they won it by like 10, right? And so like the swing there, if it's an R, it's a plus 30 swing towards the Democrats. That's an enormous number of districts that will flip. And so, if you look at what the DCCC, which is the political arm of the Democrats in the House, they're saying, they're looking at over 30 districts right now. Cook's, more focused analysis of the most probable districts to flip is somewhere in 18, 15 to 18 range. And again, the Republican majority is three right
Yeah,
now.
we actually had Charlie Cook on the show a couple of weeks ago, and he said when I asked him about the probability of a House turnover from Republican to Democrat, said he'd be surprised if it didn't happen.
Yes, I would
Uh,
be. I would be surprised if it didn't happen. The Senate map is much harder for the Democrats, but you see Tom Tillis, you see Joni Ernst in trouble, all because of this bill, and that makes it
Senator Susan Collins in Maine.
Senator Susan Collins in Maine. Murkowski, the Klondike kickback that she got for her vote.
Yeah.
Is that going to come back to bite her? We hope so. We will do everything in our part to educate voters about who did what in this really disgusting period of American politics.
Alex, that's all the time we have with you, unfortunately. I want to thank you for coming back on Deadline DC with Brad Bannon. I want to thank both my guests, Alex Lawson, who you see there, and our guest in the first half hour, CNN military analyst Cedric Leighton. I also want to thank our intrepid executive producer, Mark Grimaldi, who makes sure the show runs on time and stays online. We'll be back soon with more of Deadline DC with Brad Bannon, with all sorts of guests. And my aim in this show is to reduce the Trump regime to rubble in my own small way. Make sure we'll be back next week with more guests. Miss the show at your own peril.